Have time for fun, but you know what? I want to do that Seder clip. Is that all right, guys? We do just like I'll do it quick.
Okay.
Because this gets to both, like, look.
Yeah, no, I hate this guy. Do it.
Well, it's not so much that I mean, what he's saying here, I'm going to do the same thing he did. Okay. I'm going to critique it, but then I'm also going to say it's mostly somewhat accurate. But the tonally it's a little bit wrong and this and that. And that's basically what we're looking at here. Play this clip. It's unfortunate that they tried to bill it as Russiagate 2 because on the day that the Senate intel report comes out, which confirmed a lot of stuff, like, the first time we had Mercy Wheeler on, we had her on 3 or 4 times over the course of a couple of years talking about this. She was always very skeptical of the Steele dossier. In fact, said years ago that she felt that it was specifically put out as Russian disinformation, almost like a rat F. And that's apparently what the Senate Intel Committee, chaired by a Republican, also found. Deep state. I'm not going to believe in the deep state Republican chairman of this committee. I'm going to believe in Donald Trump. He's much more believable. All right. So, but this is a piece on the post office. And this whole, there is something that we used to call a slate pitch, which was contrarianism for the sake of contrarianism. And there's a little bit of that happening here. But before you do that, you got to create a little bit of straw man. Now, the point is that, like, when you start to slice things like this, what you're doing, there's a certain amount of marketing and positioning that you're doing here. So let's watch this.
All right, Sagar, what's on your radar?
Well, I'm here to tell you all the tale of an unhinged conspiracy theory born
Pause
on the
it for 1
internet.
second. We should just tell you that we're speeding it up because I want to go through the first couple of minutes. Go ahead.
Media hammered relentlessly on MSNBC, born in part by Trump's ineptitude and incompetence, and which reveals an enduring truth about a rock-solid ideology held within the Republican Party. No, I'm not talking about Russiagate. I'm talking here about the post office. And I'm going to tell you exactly what's going on within that agency and the depressing truths that it tells you about our media and our political leaders of both parties. Nobody is being spared here. The theory goes something like this. Trump and his Postmaster General, who is a longtime Republican donor, are destroying the United States Postal Service to make it harder for people to vote by mail in the 2020 election. If you believe this, I genuinely don't blame you. The mainstream media and the Democratic Party have done it.
Now he defines the theory as Trump and the Postmaster General are conspiring to make it harder to vote by mail. Now, we've here been saying that it's been a twofer, right? People keep hearing me say twofer. They want to destroy they have a long-term agenda to destroy the post office. They want to privatize it. And Trump is enjoying it because he wants to make sure that there's no vote by mail. And of course, Trump has actually got almost like a second, a point one version of that agenda, which is I want to make the potential result of the election questionable. So I can both prevent vote by mail and also disparage it. Go ahead.
A horrific disservice to the American people by essentially sowing doubt about the results of the 2020 election, when in fact, rank incompetence and ideology by Trump are a much easier answer. So let's go down the list of claims, and we'll get the facts.
I'll pause it for 1 second.
I'm relying heavily
here.
So
what he's saying here is he's saying here that it's problematic that people are saying that there's a problem with this, with complaining about the post office for doing this, because that creates a sense of insecurity about the election. So he's now saying that talking about the post office as if it's under attack to undermine the ability to vote by mail is problematic because it undermines people's faith in the election. That's what he's saying is happening.
Answer. So let's go down the list of claims, and we'll get the facts about each one. I'm relying heavily here for this monologue on a fantastic Medium piece. It was written by Nick Harper. He's a nonprofit staffer who apparently is a better journalist than every other major national political reporter. Now, my personal favorite part about this conspiracy theory are the ones which supposedly have the most evidence. So the U.S. Postal Service, they say, is intentionally removing post office boxes off American streets, and in some cases are even locking them up to prevent people from putting in their mail. Evidence for these claims, it's in viral claims on Twitter, like this one from Thomas Kennedy. Dramatically shows a stack of post office boxes, dramatically stacked together. It was retweeted 82,000 times. Or this one from Rex Chapman, showing red locks on postal service boxes in Burbank, California. The dramatic image was retweeted 20,000 times. Or this one from Senator Claire McCaskill, in which she shared a photo of a mailbox in D.C. with a lock on it. There's just one problem, however. That viral stack of mailboxes, yeah, those have been there for years, and it was taken at a warehouse where they refurbish old post office boxes. Those locked boxes in Burbank, California, that photo's from 2016. And actually, those locks are meant to allow only one letter to be dropped in at a time to discourage mail theft. My personal favorite, Claire McCaskill's photo of a mailbox from D.C., well, it's from Capitol Hill. And by that, I mean Capitol Hill in Seattle, Washington. So once again, that device is also meant to discourage theft, not to actually render the machines functionless. I don't want to dunk too much, though. It is true that as a cost-cutting measure, the post office was removing some boxes off the street, mostly to reduce the hours worked by members of the post office and answer the outcry that was spurred on by false information.
So the biggest piece of evidence that he highlights for this claim are some dude, Thomas Kennedy, I don't know who that is, some other dude, Rex Chapman, who this is, and Claire McCaskill, who literally no one listens to. Yes, she gets on MSNBC, and she tweeted out this thing about the post. Now, the post office boxes are the weakest piece of evidence of the theory that he propagates, that I'm not even sure that everybody's propagating. But that's the weakest piece of evidence. One, so much so that when I saw that report about in Portland, I didn't even report it because I think that's probably pretty common, and that mail carrier that we just had on the phone also indicated it.
The first time I saw the Rex Chapman tweet, it was somebody debunking it. And I think that's what most of those retweets were, actually.
Who is Rex Chapman and who is Thomas Kennedy?
I'm not sure who Rex Chapman is. He's a big account on Twitter. He looks like some clout chaser that like posts a lot of leftist content now, but I don't know
because
who he
it's just like
Oh, did we lose Sam?
What happened?
All right, folks. I'm sorry. So what about, can you see me now?
No, we can't. We can hear you though.
Okay. So, all right. So, where was I? Oh, so Claire McCaskill, nobody listens to Claire McCaskill. Nobody knows who Thomas Kennedy is. Nobody knows who Rick Chapman is. And that's the basis of saying that this is a wild conspiracy theory. Go ahead.
Measure, the post office was removing some boxes off the street, mostly to reduce the hours worked by members of the post office and answer the outcry that was spurred on by false information about the office. And the post office ultimately came out and said it will pause the practice completely. The next claim is that a new Postmaster General is a Republican donor handpicked by Trump who assumed office 2 months ago with the sole purpose of destroying mail-in ballots for the election. Except there's a problem there. Trump does not have a say in who the Postmaster General is. The Postmaster General is selected by an independent board of governors, of which currently consists of 3 Republicans, a Democrat, who are unanimously selected him in May because he spent 35 years as the head of a logistics company, something that pertains
Pause
to
it for 1 second.
Pause it for
1 second. And again, folks, I apologize. I lost my internet, so I'm only here for audio. Okay, look, the next claim isn't that he was brought in exclusively for that purpose. There's a hostility towards the post office. The guy has a financial interest in Amazon. He has a financial interest in all of these entities that are would win if the post office is privatized. And so that's not the narrowness of the claim, but the idea that this independent board that is dominated by Republicans just came upon this guy because he's good at logistics and not because he's contributed millions of dollars to Republicans, not just the president, but to others. The guy that is just a total coincidence is just absurd. I mean, give me a break. But continue.
Similarly sounds alarming until you dig into it, that the post office is destroying mail sorting machines, which are the same ones used to sort mail-in ballots. Well, that is interesting because the order to dismantle some of the mail machines went out on May 15th. And before this, the new Postmaster General was even in charge. But as Nick Harper notes, the type of mail that these machines are sorting are decreasing in volume from last year, and it fits with the numerous documents that have been published by the government since 2012 in order to make the post office more efficient. Which brings us to the last and final claim, which some of you are probably shouting at your screens.
Pause it right there. Pause it right there. Now, the bottom line is our government has plans to invade Canada. All right. The idea that because these plans existed from 2018 when Steve Mnuchin was basically putting together was in a committee to figure out how to essentially privatize the post office. The fact that this guy was brought in to do it and that the plans to some extent, like he said, some extent existed, that's not dispositive of anything. That's not dispositive of anything. Continue.
Right now. Sagar, you're an idiot. Trump himself already admitted to all of this in a recent interview. He straight up said he doesn't want to fund the post office because Democrats want to expand mail-in balloting. You're probably yelling, he admitted to it. And you know what? I don't blame you for thinking that, because just like with Russiagate, Trump is his own worst enemy. But the truth is that as much as it may appear that Trump does not mind the idea of screwing with the post office to make it harder for people to vote by mail, that there's no evidence that anything like that is actually happening. The truth instead is that despite Trump's nefarious intentions here, is that what has happened instead is the culmination of years of problems with the post office, some self-inflicted, some imposed by budgetary constraints, which were engineered by Republican lawmakers who have long hated the post office and want to privatize it. The slow in service that has come about, as Nick Harper puts it, is, quote, there are changes happening to our postal system because it's been needed for a long time. And USPS cannot wait any longer to make cost-saving changes without becoming...
Pause it. First off, they can wait longer. They could get a bailout. The fact of the matter is that Donald Trump, and just like in Russiagate, he may be his own worst enemy, but go read the Senate intel report. Part of the reason why there's Russiagate is because his campaign manager was feeding information in both directions with a Russian spy, Kalimnik. Part of it was also that he was in constant contact with Roger Stone, who was basically the agent of the president in the way that he was functioning, was coordinating the drops of this material when it was most beneficial for their campaign, like when the grab them by the P word tape dropped. And then, like, the idea that Trump can't be incompetent and can't just, like, if this was going on and there was a president who didn't want to slow down vote by mail, they would be reacting very differently to what the Postmaster General is doing than what Donald Trump is doing. So none of this is dispositive whatsoever of what's going on. Is there hyperbole? Do some people have it wrong that the post office boxes themselves? But we also have... You can't see me, so I don't need to hold this where I'm holding it. But we also have 40 states that are suing the post office because they have been told by the post office, we cannot process your mail-in ballots. That to me seems like a pretty big piece of evidence that they're attempting to inhibit mail-in voting. Now, I don't think that the post office can't handle these mail-in ballots, but we do know it is a fact. It is a fact. 21 states are suing, and the post office has told over 40 states that we can't handle it. Now, just the fact of telling a state that we can't handle it, whether it's true or not, inhibits their vote by mail. So yes, people's hair should be on fire about this. You're not telling the truth because you think there's some 3 or 4 websites or Twitter feeds are being hyperbolic about this. That's absurd. It's absurd. Mm-hmm. And so that's my take on this. People should be concerned about it. Look at this. The Alaska.com, I'm not sure which paper out there. In a nationwide rule change that went unnoticed this summer, the U.S. Postal Service has forbidden employees from signing absentee ballots as witnesses while on duty. The change could make it more difficult for Alaskans, particularly rural residents, to vote by mail. Now, that may hurt Donald Trump in the long run, but if you want to talk about Donald Trump's incompetence, say his incompetence is that he doesn't know how to manipulate the system to benefit him. He thinks it's going to benefit the Democrats to have vote by mail, and it very well may. They may not be concerned about rural Alaskans, but maybe they're concerned about, I don't know, other states. So the bottom line is that nonprofit guy on Medium who seems like a decent fellow, worked a lawyer for the League of Women Voters, didn't have this story from Alaska.com, didn't know that the Postal Service has forbidden employees from signing absentee ballots, didn't mention anything about the lawsuit by 21 states across the country, didn't mention anything about the 40 states that have been formed by the Postal Service that they can't handle their ballots, whether it's true or not. I mean, so that's not the full story. They're not just truth tellers. They're tainting it with their perspective as well. Is there hyperbole? Yes. Welcome to America News, whether it's online, whether it's on TV, wherever.
Yeah. And he seems to be implying throughout that it can't possibly be political because the Democrats were complicit in some of these attacks on the post office, as if the Democrats have never done anything that undermines their own power in ways they couldn't predict.
Right. And there may be some, there's certainly may be some members of the Democratic Party who get maybe some of their funding from FedEx or UPS or whatever it is.
Can I just say, also on the Russiagate 2.0 framing of this, like with Russiagate, even if we could argue about the severity of it, there's a straightforward geopolitical argument to the stakes there. What are we risking being too vigilant about plans to like box up the post office? Like, I don't understand. I mean, I think it's all, I mean, I know what it is. It's because they want to emphasize leftist overreaction to any kind of reactionary act of power. That's all this game is about.
Yes.
Yeah. And the tampering is much more material and easy to see in this case, right? Like Russiagate, you're not like literally going in and tampering with the machines that they use to do the vote with. Like it was much more diffuse and, a lot of social media, online stuff. This is going to be a lot harder to argue against, I think.
Yes, I think so. And the bottom line is that if you did not have a president who was rightly or wrongly in terms of whether it benefits him against vote by mail, and I think there's an argument that he's actually shooting himself in the foot, but that's his agenda. And his reaction to what this Postmaster General, who is not so independently picked, I'm sorry, is not, because it's in his best interest if he wants to privatize the post office and the Republican Party to keep Donald Trump in office, incidentally. Just because his agenda doesn't, it may be contrary to his own actual benefit, doesn't mean that he wouldn't react differently if he really wanted to allow vote by mail to happening when the Postmaster General, supposedly independent, is doing these things. I'm sorry. It's just a poor argument. And it really is just all you're doing is being concerned with, like, I don't know, the performative aspects of this rather than the substance. The substance is real. I'm sorry. It's real. And whether the story, it's also very difficult to get the specifics of every story clear when people are working so desperately hard to involved in subterfuge, right? Like Russiagate, even with this Senate intel report, would look a lot worse if we didn't have people who were lying to all these committees and to these investigators. All right, well, folks, I've lost my internet service, so thanks for indulging us.